What up, nation? Welcome to another edition of the Wise Tech NFL DFS First Look. CK013 here. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. And I'm joined once again by one of the original gangsters of the Wise Tech Nation. Original. Talking about Patio Joe. You can find him on Twitter at Patio Joe Ref. Patio Joe is the Wise Tech residential cash game specialist, FanDuel specialist. Joey, what's happening?
Not much. Just sitting down Tuesday. It's week 9 already. We're about halfway through the season. Can't believe it. Watching a little election coverage and just getting ready to talk a little football with you.
Yeah, it's a wild. It's been a fucking wild year, and wild election. Everything. It's just crazy. It's a wild day. One of the more, regardless of what side you're on, for me personally, it's been one of the more. And I'm like you. I'm not like super into. I'm not like super into politics. Obviously, we pay attention and know what's going on if you're an adult. But I'm not like super into the whole trying to scream at people over politics, trying not to judge people based off their belief in politics. But this one's been a lot more edgy, right? More edgy in this one.
Oh yeah, you go on Twitter these days, and it's everybody has their opinion and stuff like that. And when it comes to politics, you just kind of gotta. I bit my tongue, and it's just like you just let other people show their colors one way or the other. It's like we were saying in pre-show. It's basically like 10% on each side that kind of screw it up for the people in the middle that are just trying to live their life. But my one thing to tell you, no matter who becomes president for the next 4 years, everybody's still got to wake up tomorrow and go to work and provide for their family if you have children. That doesn't change.
Yeah, man, day-to-day responsibilities. I'll tell you, it definitely doesn't change. That's the Wise Tech Nation doing dirties. I mean, we got no choice. It's dirty or die around here. So I'm with that sentiment. With that said, we are here to talk about some football, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Shout out to Stephen B in the chat. Already on for hitting the like button. The likes really help us out, go a long way in helping us to continue to do what we do for free on YouTube, on Twitch, and all that good stuff. So please hit the like button. Really helps us out. And subscribe to the channel if you're new. If you're new, welcome. We do all kinds of free DFS stuff here. You came to the right place. Notifications bell's got to be on so you're notified when we do go live. And all that dirt. Joey, with week 8 in the books, like we knew going into it, it was going to be kind of an ugly slate. And a lot of mistakes I can think of now, like tournament-wise, and we can get in that later. But I did want to get into our listener league. So, real quick, nation, we are doing the listener leagues, and to get in, it's in the description. So I made the entries free just to make sure that they will go off no matter what. And I wanted to get more people in on DraftKings because on FanDuel the limit was like 20 regardless. On DraftKings you can have a lot of people if it's free. So I'm doing that, and what we're going to do is whoever finishes first is going to get $25. Myself, Patio Joe, Paulie D. Myself, Patio Joe, and Paul.
Freudian slip.
Yeah.
Polio D. Maybe have said that once or twice before on the show. That's Polio D.
That's like his new alias, Polio D. Which one we getting? Which one we getting? But yeah, we'll be in the contest. If one of us win, obviously we'll give it to the next closest non-us at the top, which was the case. Shout out to Paulie D, who I'll pull up his Polio D, I guess, as we've dubbed him, who did he did the dirty in the listener league this week. Let's see if I can pull him up. I know he took first. Just gotta friggin' find it. Here we go. In DraftKings, man. So granted, it was only 8. It was kind of pathetic, but it's a new thing. And I appreciate those of you. I see a lot of the regulars. MG was in there. MD Smith was in there. Wig, D. Millie, Craig. They were all in there. It was cool to have a little friendly competition type going. This one was obviously for a prize. But Paulie ended up winning with a 142 with Lamar Jackson, the Derrick Henry. Paulie had James White, Deontay Johnson, and Duvernay. But the key to him winning this contest, there were 2 players that did extremely well. And that was number 1, Dalvin Cook, right? Which, hindsight's 2020. But like I remember talking to Paulie leading up to the slate and saying like I could see a world where, because we were trying to like talk about Adams, and it's like I see a world where he just doesn't. The Packers kind of struggle. We knew there was going to be wind. Figure they're going to have to throw. and we didn't think there was an answer for Dalvin Cook on the other side. So we should have put it together, right? Like all of us in tournaments at least should have put it together to play him more, especially because we knew he was going to be lower owned. And then Paulie had Cooper Kupp, who and this little contest was 25%. I mean, it's only 7 of us, like I said, but Cooper Kupp with the monster game against Miami, it was glorious. It was enough to have him take first in the listener league. MG came second. He was the runner-up. With the Garoppolo team, he had Metcalf, Keenan Allen, Ayuk, all ruined by Garoppolo. And I played the AJ Green, another guy shit the bed on me. Kareem Hunt, that hurt. Like, that was bad. I don't know about you, Joe, but I was pretty heavy. I mean, you were on Kareem also, right? I was.
Yeah, I mean, this week for me in cash, it was, Jimmy G was probably the main thing because, like, Hunt was 80% owned, so everybody was going there. That wasn't really the thing. It was cash games came down to you either paid down to Jimmy G or you paid up to Russell. And, I was, I could totally see why people did it towards the end as the slate moved and the weather kind of moved that way. I could understand why people were going there. I just thought that, Garoppolo was going to be able to put up better numbers than he did. He obviously is not healthy or he got hurt during the game or something, but it's kind of, it's just, to us as we were talking in the Slack, how just never play Jimmy G again, especially when you're in that good of a spot. You got to at least come up with 10 to 15 points. He didn't even do that.
At the end of the day, like, tournament-wise, like, next season comes, whatever, I will play him again if I have to. But that's only, like, that takes discipline. Because in reality, like, the other way you look at it is how many slates in a season is Jimmy G going to go for enough points that you were going to get first place in a contest? And the answer is what? 1, 2, 3 tops in a good year. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's just 3 weeks where I'll take the L. It's just max 3, maybe even none, because we haven't seen it yet this year. So I feel you on that, 100. Moving on to FanDuel. Let's see here. Shout out to Craig 1311. Holla. First place with Jimmy G on FanDuel. First place with Jimmy G. And we had 10 people in that one. So we had a little bit more people hopping on FanDuel. Again, encourage you, Nation. We're going to do it free. And that's going to be our giveaway this week. This time we're going to do the giveaways is if you finish first place, you'll get $25. So free to get in. No reason not to get in. We'll have a little bit of fun. If you win, we'll kind of dissect your lineup, see how you did it. And FanDuel only allows me to do up to 20. So that it's going to be limited. Get in there quick. The links are in the description on YouTube and on Podbean. Yeah, make sure you get in there. DraftKings, I was able to put it up more, but hop in there and get a chance to win $25 for free and have a little fun. Put some teams in against everybody, against the nation. See where the nation's at. But Craig went Jimmy G, Kareem Hunt. He had Devontae Adams and DK Metcalf that kind of carried his team. He obviously had Brandon Ayuk. Ayuk was a big one, and I was big on him because I was big on the Seattle game where I fucked up, Joe. And again, hindsight's 2020, I know, but I was big on the running back situation for Seattle. The problem is I went with Homer because I saw he was active. You know what I mean? I saw he was active, and I should have known because they said he didn't practice all week, and I knew that. And this is how we have to remember these things so that we can learn going forward. And that's an important one to remember. He hadn't practiced, and Jay Glazer was expecting him to be out. Like he had heard reports that they're not doing well. They don't even expect him to play. So I should have put that together. Like there's only 2 running backs on the depth chart. One is banged up, but is active for basically emergencies at this point, right? If you haven't practiced all week. Penny practiced all week. He got reps all week. So what made me think he wasn't going to be the one to get him again? And that was a big disastrous mistake on my part. He made all the difference for me. Like I wouldn't have had a great week, but I would have done a lot better than how I did. Like I wore like hundreds of dollars, maybe even thousands of dollars better. Had I had that right switch. So that was my biggest, I have to remember that going forward. I gotta just read it wrong. I mean, Kareem Hunt was just it's a process thing, right? Sometimes it doesn't work out. But process wise, I mean, we knew he was getting the snaps, we knew he was getting the touches. Matchup was there. And just unfortunately the Raiders hopped ahead. And it kind of changed the game script. And the Raiders, man, shout out to them. They were killing shout out to them. They know how to kill a clock. Damn. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, let's not forget that Kareem Hunt is the backup running back in Cleveland. So trying to expect starting running back numbers out of a backup running back. We all know who the superior running back in Cleveland is. I don't even have to say it. He's coming back in 2 weeks. You'll see the difference. That's right, Nick Chubb.
Oh yeah, Nick Chubb all day, all day. But shout out to Craig. Shout out to the nation. Again, we're gonna keep these going. This time I'm making the entry fees. Entry fees are free. You just hop in there, and first place you get $25 on each site. So on the FanDuel one, sounds like a pretty good deal. You only gotta be 20 people. DraftKings, it may be less, but there's potential for it to be more. But anyway, hop in there. Links in the description. Have some fun with the nation. With that said, we are moving on to week 9, and I'm very excited, man. I actually like this slate. I think. Well, from what I've seen, I don't know much. We're about to find out how much I like it right now as I talk about this with you. But there were a couple things that stood out. We'll hit them as we go because we go game by game here. That's what we do. And Joey, we are starting off with the Chicago Bears, Tennessee Titans. We have a 46.5 total. Titans currently 5.5-point favorites. That's actually down half a tick from 6. We're going to start off with the road team. Talk to me about the Chicago Bears.
Chicago Bears don't need Nick Foles. David Montgomery, you can play at 5,900 as a cash game running back. He's the biggest vanilla player in the league, but he's going to get the volume. I mean, he had 21 attempts and only got 89 yards in 5 quarters last week. He got 2 targets for 16. I mean, he's just so vanilla, but he's not going to get you that 0. So in a cash game setting, you want to go with Montgomery on matchup too. It's not bad. We saw what Gio Bernard did against them last week, so I don't mind that. Wide receiver, it's Allen Robinson. He's got a decent matchup. 6,900. His price is lowered, so I think he'll be somewhat popular. But I don't think you need Jimmy Graham. Then maybe I guess you could go with the defense, but I don't know. I just don't. The Titans don't really turn the ball over that much, so pretty much just Montgomery or Robinson.
Yeah, I think I'm with you for the most part. Like, I think matchup wise, I think it's good for the Bears offense. My issue, of course, is the potential pace of the game, especially if Tennessee does play from ahead. Like, Tennessee plays real fast, but it's usually in shootouts. Like, we haven't really seen what they would do had they played from ahead in a situation. They are favorites in this game. So if they're playing from ahead, they could slow things down. On the flip side, it is kind of interesting to at least look at Allen Robinson for tournament purposes. Obviously, the matchup-wise, Tennessee's defense has not been good, and their offense has been really efficient. So that's going to be what wins out. There is potential for this game to be shootouty, right? Like, the Bears' defense has been solid, but so has Tennessee's offense. They've been really efficient. And I think perception on them might be low because of last week. They didn't do all that well against Cincinnati, which was kind of weird. You know, I did think that was weird, but curious to see what happens. Like you said, though, Allen Robinson is the main standout here. I think if there was there's very few situations where I would play a Nick Foles. This would probably be one of them if there wasn't so many other quarterbacks on this slate that look juicy. But or at least there's a few that really stand out to me. So I'm with you on that, man. I'm not really into the Montgomery too much. I guess if I fell backwards into him, it's not the end of the world with Tyreek Cohen out. He's playing all the reps and everything. It's just, man, you just keep watching. And like last week, he finally looked good. He actually looked good. But week after week, you play this dude, and it's just like your consistent 7 to 10. Then you feel so dumb afterwards. But again, this could be the matchup. This could be the game. If Chicago was going to be in a shootout, it may be something like this. Tennessee's offense is efficient. Any interest in like a Darnell Mooney for value? Well, on FanDuel, he's not really that cheap, right?
No.
Yeah, he's 3,900 on DraftKings.
Maybe a little bit, just if you're doing multiple teams, if something like, I just, like for me, I could see this being a really like just slow game though too, and just not worth it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, both teams would like to try to run. Speaking of the run, let's talk about King Henry and the rest of the Tennessee Titans. Any interest there?
Yeah, I'll tell you, for Derrick Henry to pay off on FanDuel, he's really got to score a touchdown and maybe even multiple touchdowns. I mean, last week he was 9,500. He did fine, but he only got one touchdown. He gets like no targets, like at all. Like you just don't throw to him. And on FanDuel, it's just really tough, And you learn your lesson, sort of. So it's like there's other running backs in that range to where, unless you think Henry's going to take over this game, and everybody thinks, oh, it's November now. Here we go. It's November. So obviously, the defense is going to be like, well, it's November. We got to let Derrick Henry run on us now. That's what they're going to do. It's going to let him run on us. And that's not always the case. It doesn't always work that way. So like last week, it seemed like fine, but he didn't get in the end zone twice and it didn't really pay off. And it didn't help us in cash games that much. So Henry's okay. Wide receivers, the Chicago secondary is not too bad. So I'm not too keen on, maybe AJ Brown you could throw out there. Corey Davis has been like, Mr. Dependable almost every game. He's gotten at least, averages about 5 catches and 50, 60 yards and got 3 touchdowns on the game on the year. So I don't mind that. Tight ends, the Jonnu Smith shine on that car is off. So I would not go there either.
With Humphreys out, like it's just one less person that they have available in a situation where their targets are already fairly concentrated, right? I mean, Corey Davis coming on the scene this year has been a little I think Humphreys being out does benefit Corey Davis into keeping it a little more secure of a role. You mentioned Chicago's secondary has been good, and they have been. They've given up the 31st most fantasy points to wide receivers and quarterbacks this season. They've been very good. The tight end is the one position that they've shown some kind of vulnerability. 11th most fantasy points given up to opposing tight ends. Jonnu Smith brought me pretty bad last week. What I do like is I think perception wise, I think the Titan players are going to be really low owned. So whether that's Derrick Henry or one of these passing game options, maybe even Jonnu Smith at a tight end position that to me is kind of loaded. There could be something here for tournaments that goes off low, and I think it could even be Henry. I don't love the spot either, Joe. But there is a world where, like you said, this game is real slow, and Henry just needs to break one run. If he already accumulates close to 100 yards, which he certainly could even against Chicago, and he doesn't get the touchdown, but then he breaks that 60, 70, 80-yard run for that touchdown, that's it. It's like a Miles Sanders, like he breaks the one run in a bad matchup, and you're just like, fuck, But so for tournament purposes, there's definitely a path, but I agree with you that in the cash game world, there's just other options that just look better. But definitely someone. I mean, this seems like an all tournament team, right? They're like it's against Chicago. Don't overthink it. But these are guys that you save for tournaments for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and one other thing is don't go chasing points with Anthony Miller. He had a good game last week, but
yeah,
don't go down that road.
Yeah, no, I feel you on that one. Moving on to the next, we've got the Detroit Lions and the Minnesota Vikings. We have a 52 total, down from 53. Vikings opened up -3.5. They're up to -4. Let's start with the Detroit Lions, the Galladay-less Detroit Lions. Joey, start us off.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like Stafford a little bit more if Galladay was there. So now we get what is that, Quintez Cephas or something? The guy's name wasn't that his name or something like that? Yeah. He's in there, and Danny Amendola. It's a good matchup. Marvin Jones. So I feel like they might carry some popularity just because the Minnesota secondary is god awful. So we might want to attack it. I just don't think that you could play Stafford in a cash game setting. He'd have to be more of a GBP. Obviously on the running back side, DeAndre Swift is interesting for DraftKings. I think you can catch some passes if you think negative game script. If you think that Minnesota's going to be up, then you like Swift. But to me, it's Stafford in GPP and maybe a little Marvin Jones or Amendola on DK.
I'm a little reluctant. I mean, it's a great matchup, like you said, for Stafford and the receivers. I'm just a little reluctant with Stafford when Galladay's out. Like, it seems to be such a difference maker. And I know that he connected with Marvin Hall a bunch last week and Marvin Jones, obviously. And so they're capable. But I think I would rather just get exposure by playing one of these receivers. Danny Amendola is only 3,700, not nearly my favorite. Marvin Hall was interesting. To see him step into that role and get that usage. Earlier in the season, it was Cephas. Is Marvin Hall now that guy? Because at Marvin Hall, I have a little bit more confidence in getting those plays. Marvin Jones, man, we saw him in his situation earlier too, and he didn't do shit without Galladay. So I'm a little worried that, like, was that a fluke? I mean, maybe he's got some positive regression coming, whatever, but, you know, I don't know. I just don't feel great about it. And Galladay being out really concerns me with this offense. With that said, it's still a phenomenal matchup, and you feel like one of these receivers is going to go off. And outside of Marvin Jones on DraftKings, they're all extremely cheap. So I got my eye on Marvin Hall, but I got to, like, listen more and be sold more that he's going to be that guy, because we just saw it with the Bucks, right? Godwin was out. Just when you think you know who Arians is going to play in that third receiver role, he makes a change, right? We all thought it was going to be Tyler Johnson. What happens? Mickens gets more snaps. It's just so
Yeah.
I don't want to fall for that, but this does look like some interesting value here. Moving over to the Minnesota side, Joe. Dalvin Cook was the hero last week. I would assume he's going to be very popular this week because he's in another really good matchup. Start us off with him and then talk about the rest of the Vikings.
Yeah, Dalvin Cook probably is most. I don't think that you're really point chasing if you go up to him this week for running back. He's in a great matchup, and people think, well, Jonathan Taylor didn't do too well. Well, Wilkins and Hines and tore up that defense. So we know that Dalvin Cook provides a receiving floor that is just so much better than Derrick Henry. And you can see not even that good. I mean, the most targets that he's gotten has been 5. The most receptions he's gotten all year is 5. But when Derrick Henry gets like 1 a game. So when you're comparing him at that price point, it's Dalvin Cook. If you're going to be playing, if you're going up that high at running back, 100% lock in Dalvin Cook. It's a great matchup against the Lions. Receiver, I think it's open game on either Thielen or Jefferson. We saw last week, if you watch the game a little bit, Jair Alexander was on Jefferson for a lot of that game. So what does that say? That says that teams are starting to think that Jefferson is a better player than Thielen. Take that for what you will, but I think they're both viable. Thielen is a little bit overpriced for at 7,700. I would prefer Jefferson. He has a higher ceiling, but Thielen is more of a cash game play if you were going to go that way. But I think in cash, it's completely just go with Cook if you're going to go pay up that high. And Cousins, you don't need Cousins.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I think Dalvin Cook on DraftKings 8,200, popular for good reason. I don't have any arguments against him. It's not, again, like you said, it's not about point chasing. He's got that kind of upside. The Vikings like to run. They like to run and then play action down the field. That's what they do. So he's going to get his opportunities. They're at home. I don't hate the idea of Dalvin Cook Detroit defense. I had mentioned that I really think that Stafford struggles a lot more when he doesn't have Galladay, and that's just gonna be more touches for Cook. So as long as Cook can stay healthy in this one, I'm with you. It's not about point chasing. It's about he's got another really good matchup. He's at home. His team is favored, and he's playing an offense that's struggled already so far this season, and is now in a situation where they're missing their best receiver. The Thielen Jefferson situation on DraftKings is a little more interesting. They're only $600 apart. Thielen's 6'7", which for him is a really good price. Justin Jefferson's 6'1", which is about where he's been since people realized he was actually pretty good. So in DraftKings, I think it's more tempting to define the money for Thielen at 6'7", just because you're just getting a really good deal. And obviously Jefferson, I think at this point we've seen like the explosive. He's really Diggs. Like, he's Diggs on this team, and it's very impressive. But Thielen at 6'7". This is definitely something I want to consider. Moving on. We've got the New York Giants and the Washington football team. We have a 41 total. Washington currently 3-point favorites, which is down from 3.5. Talk to me about Paulie D's G-Men.
Yeah, they're coming off of a short week. Going to be playing the Washington football team that's coming off of a bye. Um, Daniel Jones don't need running backs. Gallman, you don't even know if right now at this point if Devontae Freeman's coming back. If he's not, he had a good enough volume to where 5,500 is not that bad. I mean, if you're looking at David Montgomery at that same price, I would be looking at this guy, especially if um, he's going to be the starter again. Wide receiver, it's Shepard, Tate, Slayton. They're going up against the best secondary in the league, or one of the best secondaries. So I don't think you really need it. I think Evan Ingram is probably a pretty decent play, and it's probably the only play I'll be looking at from the Giants.
Yeah, I agree. You can take some stabs on Slayton's the only one. Well, that's not true. I got Slayton and Shepard. I wouldn't mind taking stabs on, and like if you have the amount of teams. But I'm with you. Neither of them are a priority. This isn't exactly the most exciting offensive game. If Freeman is out, I could play some Gallman for sure. If Freeman's in, no thanks, obviously. But if Freeman's out, I could play some Gallman. But of course, in the last game we saw, man, they were playing Alfred Morris, man. Like they traveled back in time. I guess some of these. I'm telling you, bro. Like the NFC East is like a gang. Like once you're in the NFC East, that's it. You know what I mean? Like if you're in NFC East for life, it's like even with Garrett, man. I think about Alfred Morris has played for like every team in the NFC East, I think, at this point. But yeah, that's a little worrisome. But there's another value running back who we'll talk about later. At this point, or at least we're speculating there may be a couple, if you look at it that way. So in a more tempting game, so I'm with you on that. Ingram, though, does appear to be in the best spot. The Washington football team has given up the 9th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. And Washington's played fast, but keep in mind that's because they're fucking always trailing. With that said, talk to me about the Washington side.
Washington side, they're kind of tough to put your finger on who's going to get what. I mean, you could go for Antonio Gibson. I think he makes for a fine GPP play if you think he's going to get that volume coming out of the bye that he had, going into it with Dallas. He had 20 carries. McLaurin is in a good spot, but he's going to be on James Bradbury. So, they played 2 weeks ago and he had 12 targets, went 7 for 74 against. I think Kyle Allen was the quarterback that week. I know they've had some changes there, but I think that was a Kyle Allen. It might have been the Alex Smith week, but I don't mind that. And I think, once again, I think Logan Thomas is probably the best play for the Washington team. He's like pretty much guaranteed four targets a game. He gets in the end zone. That's great. He's 5,000 on FanDuel. I think that, even last week we had 4 of the top tight ends in the league, and one of them produced. All the other ones busted. So you might as well pay down because tight end is just a shit show. They're going to get you 4 for 40, and if they fall in the end zone, they're going to make value. If not, they won't kill you. That's what you got to look for.
I get it. Hate to play it, not the game. Right? Or don't hate the player, hate the game. That's what that's so long ago that was a thing. Can't even remember how to say it. Yeah, I'm not really interested in too much here. Terry McLaurin is okay. I think Bradbury's beatable, But Bradbury's like real physical, so sometimes I worry about the smaller dudes because you can get real physical with them. But at the same time, like usually those guys have some massive speed like McLaurin, and they could really burn anyone. Nothing over the top here. McLaurin's really the only thing. Maybe Antonio Gibson is somebody I'll look into more. I know he's coming off a really good game, but that was just a really good situation against Dallas. There was no offense. He was able to get 20 carries. He only got 1 target. You know why? Because his team was fucking winning, and so they ran the ball. So not really interested because I think I do respect the Giants' defense. Like I do it, and I actually like the defenses in both this game. I think that's really where I'm currently aligning with at the moment. But it is early. Mm-hmm. Very, very early. With that said, we're going to move on to the Houston Texans and the Jacksonville Jaguars. We have a 50 total down from 51. Houston opened up -6.5. They're up to -7. Talk to me about the Houston Texans.
Yeah, this is a game Yeah, I think they played 2 or 3 weeks ago, and Houston's coming. Both teams are coming off of a bye. So Deshaun Watson, kind of like just like Kyler Murray, just cash game, very cash game every week, and so I feel like he's a good spot, for another, to be on your cash game lineups if you want to. You got to pay up this week, I think, with the guys, and he's one of them that'll be on the short list. Running back DJ is much like David Montgomery, only about $1,000 more expensive, so I don't think you really need to go there. Even though he's in a good spot, he's pretty much the same, 10 to 14 points a week. Wide receiver, we got, Will Fuller stayed with the team, so he's got a good matchup. I think you got to look at him. Same thing with Brandon Cooks. So I would look at them, and then tight end. No, I'm not over you, Darren Fells, after 2 weeks ago. No, I am not playing you ever again. No.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel you on them tight ends. And honestly, this tight end slate seems kind of loaded so far. Interesting Watson. Yeah, my biggest concern with the Houston offense and how much of the Houston offense I get exposure to is what is Jacksonville going to do. They don't have Gardner Minshew, who, to his credit, I do think makes a difference on his team. It's one thing if they actually had a backup, but they got this Jake Luton kid. I really don't know much about him. It's a good matchup for him, so if he doesn't do well, it's because he's not good. So to me, it's like a stack it or leave it situation with this game. Either I want all of it because this rookie just comes out and leans on James Robinson and gets the job done, or Houston just kind of rolls him, in which I would want like one guy, like maybe I pluck a David Johnson or Will Fuller would be the ideal. But that's the thing though, like Brandon Cooks also is a guy you would want. So there's definitely not to like. It's just a matter of like how many. But I do like the Houston offense in general. Just got to do some digging as the week goes on to see what we think Jacksonville will be able to do. With that said, talk to me about Jake Luton, James Robinson, and the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, I mean, back to Houston real quick. I think honestly, if you're gonna play anybody, you can just do Watson naked and not even worry about it and get your, piece of Fuller or Cooks that way. Especially if you're doing the cash game setting. Jags, you don't want anything with Luton. Running backs, James Robinson's getting to the point where at 7,300, you really got to be looking, is he really worth it? Because you get negative game script out of this game real easily. And I realized that they were down against the Chargers and they came back. But there's only one other team in the NFL that loves to give up leads. And it's not the Houston Texans. So I just, for 7,300 and the uncertainty of what's going on at the quarterback position, yes, they might lean on the running game more. I could see that. But they could also get down by 21 points and he's kind of ridden out the game and stuff. Because going into the Charger game, before the Charger game, he was had 3 subpar performances. So I don't think he's worth the price at 7,300. So that would, then wide receivers, I'm not going to go to anybody. You don't need anybody. You don't know what this quarterback's going to do. So Chark, Chenault, Cole, all them, they're all dart throws. Probably even consider, if you wanted to, the Houston defense. If it's a rookie quarterback, they get a couple sacks, a couple picks, fumbles, or whatever, and even give up some points would be okay.
Yeah, I definitely want to do more digging on Luton because, initially I'm looking at it I could see the Texas side, but in reality, the Texans' defense has been atrocious. So they have been one of the worst teams in the league against the run. We've seen epic games from running backs. Robinson was not one of them, right? They had an opportunity, didn't do so hot. His team didn't play so well. However, if this game does, at this point, especially with the rookie quarterback, if this game does get you there, it's hard to imagine that James Robinson wasn't a part of it. I would envision checkdowns. I would envision that means that Robinson had some success on the ground. So he would be the definite bringback The question is, do I think he's in a good enough spot to play him alone? And if Minshew was playing, I would definitely be more on board. I'm just a little concerned with what Lutton could do. So I got to do more digging on him, see what he's capable of. I know he's from Oregon State, but I want to see, obviously, what we think he could do, because I'm just concerned, even in a good matchup, about his team holding their end. On the other side, if this game does shoot out, like it actually shoots out, then I don't see how the Jacksonville side isn't like ridiculously helpful with Lutton at 4,900, GJ Chark at 5,2, and these are DraftKings prices, but they're also cheap. The problem is I just don't see it. So it's James Robinson, really, and that's a maybe. And like I said, come Friday we'll have a little bit more information on Lutton and his offense, hopefully. But the Houston side definitely a lot easier to pinpoint. Baltimore Ravens, Indianapolis Colts. We've got a 45 total. Ravens opened up -3.5 to now to -2.5. Not really sure why that's the thing. Talk to me about Baltimore.
Well, they're down because they have a whole bunch of guys that went on like the COVID list.
Oh,
shit. They have to test positive or not positive for 5 days.
That's right.
Or they can't play because they were like within like close contact with Marlon Humphrey. So I think that's probably why we had the line movement.
That's right.
Oh, by the way, Torrent Edwards in the chat. Cobb is fine. If you want to throw a dart at him, that's fine. But he's you know
what it is. It's the ceilings, right? Like Cooks and Fuller have such higher ceilings. So I would agree that Cobb, like their floor is all low. Like all of them have low floors. Fuller's got the highest floor. But that's really what it is for me. If you need the value, sure. But I would only play Cobb over those guys if I needed the value. If I didn't, Cooks, like you're better off that Cooks and Fuller just have bigger ceilings. They have potentials to go for like 30, whereas Cobb is more like 15, 16 is the most you're going to get. But that would be my answer to that question. He's fine. Again, he's fine. But more so if I liked him and I liked my whole lineup around him, he's not a centerpiece of your team. College boy. Continue, Joe.
Yeah. Okay, so this game is really, really weird to figure out right now. It's Lamar he's on the track, but he's going up against one of the best defenses in the league. His price is down, but I mean he hasn't done anything, to really warrant it. I think you could play him, but I think his GBP left it at that because he does have a ceiling to where he could keep up with the big boys if he were to go off. Running backs, we saw Gus Edwards get a little bit of run. J.K. Dobbins, too. If you want to go in there, he's fine, but I'm not one that does a lot of lineups. Marquise Brown, the squeaky wheel, gets the grease, so hopefully he'll get a little bit more. But, I mean, it's not all on Lamar. Maybe it's time to think that Marquise Brown, just because his nickname is Hollywood, maybe he's not that good. Maybe he's just a burner that's going to catch a couple bombs. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe he's not what we thought he was. So, I wonder, Willie Snead is like their number one receivers at some point, it seems like. So, I'm not going to go there. And Mark Andrews at 6,600 is so touchdown dependent where he gets nothing. So, I'm just like not really on the Ravens this week at all.
Yeah, I get it, man. I haven't really been on them all season. We haven't seen anything from them to make us think otherwise. From fantasy purposes, Lamar Jackson, I know recently he's been having to run more, right? But it seems like every time they're tested against a good team, you're finding out like they're not good enough, right? Like the Steelers, for instance, the Chiefs, like these are pretty epic games. Like you can win all the games in between, you can beat up all the bad teams, but you got to win against good teams, and they haven't been able to do that yet. So I think, I don't know, I just don't feel great about the situation. I do think that Dobbins and Edwards being in makes it more likely that Jackson will run in that situation. And squeaky wheel, like you said, that usually works out in football. It does. Squeaky wheel. Is it going to work for Marquise Brown in his second year? I don't know. But Brown and Jackson, man, like these are guys that have been playing ball together since they were kids. At some point in and out of the leagues. Both of those guys from Florida. Playing. I mean, you know what I'm saying. You get it. Mm-hmm. So like you expect it to gel at some point. Something doesn't seem right now. But it doesn't help that they're playing the Colts, who are just the king of the ugly game. Like, even when the game is high scoring, it is still somehow ugly when the Colts are involved. And it all has to do with your boy Phillip Rivers. No doubt. With that said, talk to me about Rivers and the Colts.
Yeah, I just don't know if you want anything from them. I mean, you don't know what's going on with that running game. So you'd have to guess the right game script that the Ravens get up big and they start throwing. Jonathan Taylor's is hurt or something's wrong with his ankle. Don't play him. His price. You don't need to. Wide receivers, you don't really know. I guess the only player I'd really be thinking of maybe Trey Burton, but I don't think you need it.
Yeah, it's hard to like anyone on the Colts offense, man. I was one of the people that were burnt by the Jonathan Taylor. I didn't play him a lot, but I did play him in like one of my main teams. Tried to be different, and that was a disaster. It's hard to say, and it's not just one guy, right? You got like two of them back there that are outplaying him, that are getting opportunities. I just don't feel great about it, and I don't feel great about the volume those guys got either. And even with the tight ends, man, I think tight ends loaded. It's not a terrible situation, but it kind of is, right? You got three of them: Wiley Cox, Shaq Doyle. They're all capable. T.Y. Hilton's been awful. And the Ravens' defense has been pretty good. I'm with you. I'm just not excited about this game much at all. Maybe we consider some defenses, but I guess it depends on what Raven players are actually available after this COVID thing is up. Next up, we've got the Carolina Panthers, Kansas City Chiefs. We have a 53 total that's up 2 points from 51. The Chiefs opened up minus 11.5. They're down to minus 10.5, coming off their ass whipping of my beloved New York Jets. Christian McCaffrey expected to be back, I believe. Joey, talk to me about C-Mac and company.
I mean, I haven't checked his price on DraftKings, but he's $9,500 on FanDuel.
He's 85 over here.
Okay, so is he the highest priced running back?
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't think anybody in their right mind, if you're doing only a few lineups, should even consider C-Mac. I mean, if you want to do a lot of lineups and be very, very contrarian, go right ahead. But he's $9,500. Coming off of like 4 games, being out, might not even be at full go. So I just don't. This team has been doing all right without him. I think that they've learned to kind of coexist without him a little bit. So I just don't know if he'll be the focal point of the offense. And I'm just not going to pay that money at all. It's way too much for the price. Somebody else can do that. I think you should fade 100%. Wide receivers, you can go with Moore and Anderson. They're both provide decent, ceilings. And tight end, you don't need nothing. Quarterback, Bridgewater, you don't need nothing either.
Yeah, I mean, McCaffrey being back has to hurt Anderson and Moore. In addition to, Curtis Samuel, who was getting running back reps, and obviously Mike Davis. 8,500 on DraftKings is very tempting because of the PPR aspect. The question, but the problem is the same. Everything you brought up, right? Number one, they've already said they're not going to abandon Mike Davis because they felt like he played well. Number two, they don't want to lose McCaffrey again. And number three, they've had success with this pass game. Now, this matchup does set up more for McCaffrey and Davis's position. So that's something I really have to come back to and think, because Dalvin Cook is, I would expect Dalvin Cook to be, more popular than McCaffrey. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But I would think that people know Dalvin Cook's role. They're a little, I know I'm unsure of what's going to happen with McCaffrey. But definitely something to consider, because are they going to give him that same usage that made him that price? We don't know. He's coming back from injury. Is he a little rusty? We don't know. But we do know that he's Christian McCaffrey. We know that this team was built around him being the workhorse. It's just when guys miss, teams have success doing other things. You don't want to cool them off. Anderson turned out to be an amazing free agent signing. You don't want to lose any steam with these guys. So, something. And the other aspect is, do you think Carolina hangs around this game long enough for them to even want to push McCaffrey if they are even in that situation? So, A lot of variables here. It is sort of a run funnel in that while you expect Carolina to play from behind, the best way to attack Kansas City remains to be on the ground through the running back. So, yeah, very interesting situation. But McCaffrey would be the one. Otherwise, I don't feel comfortable. I don't think with these other receivers. It's yes, McCaffrey or no.
Mhm.
That's like one of the first questions
Yeah.
you have to answer. What about Patty Mahomes and the Chiefs?
Yeah, I mean, Mahomes has kind of proved why he's the best player in the game last week. Threw 5 touchdowns and put up over 35 FanDuel points. So this week, I don't mind going back to him. The Carolina secondary is a little bit better. They might try and run the ball more. So I don't mind it. I mean, you could always play Patrick Mahomes in GPP settings or in cash if you wanted to. Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 7K is fine. Le'Veon Bell, I hope we realize he's not going to be a thing. Wide receivers, Tyreek Hill and Mecole Hardman. Hardman finally seems to be getting a role. I think he makes a fine GPP play. Tyreek Hill, for all of his, whatever it is, he hasn't really had like that huge blow-up game yet, but he's been pretty damn consistent. So I wouldn't mind looking at him in a cash or GPP setting if you just wanted an easy piece of this game. And then Kelsey at 8K, nothing really needs to be said. You can play him. And I also don't mind the KC defense for being at home. They're always viable.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Chiefs. I think this is a very interesting situation for these running backs, especially if you are not playing Christian McCaffrey. If you're under the impression that Carolina can't keep up or they will struggle, which is possible. They've looked good, but they could. This could be the week between Edwards-Helaire and Bell. I mean, Bell looked terrible against the Jets. Not for nothing, but I've been saying that the Jets' weakness is not against the run, it's against the pass. I know the results didn't tell that story as far as DVP goes, fantasy points allowed. The Jets have a lot of fantasy points to running backs, but it's mainly because of their offense constantly putting their defense in bad positions and constantly getting dominated as far as time of possession. So this situation is interesting, especially if Kansas City is playing from ahead. Do they want to get Bell more confidence after coming off of a bad game against his old team? Or do they rely on, Helaire to just drill? Maybe they both get some pretty good work, but obviously it's a really good matchup for the running backs. Carolina has given up a lot of fantasy points to running backs, fourth most. And just in general, in DVOA, everything tells us they're terrible against the run like they were last year. So I'm fine with taking shots on the pass game of Kansas City, but I'm more interested in these running backs if I can figure out which one I feel the most confident in. Moving on. We've got the Denver Broncos, Atlanta Falcons. We've got a 50 total up from 47.5, which is high for a Denver game, but it is an Atlanta game. Atlanta currently 4-point favorites. Talk to me, Joe, about the Broncos.
Okay, yeah. So the Broncos are coming in, and they're coming off of the great come-from-behind victory against my Los Angeles Chargers. And they're coming up now against the other team in the league that loves to give up big leads. You have Drew Lock at 7,200 going up against the Falcons D. Now, I think Drew Lock is a fine play for GPPs. But for cash, I think he's this week's Jimmy G or Derek Carr. You know what I'm saying? Like the lower price guy who's in a good spot, whether he's on the road or at home, or he's both on the road, he should be in a good script, maybe playing from behind, whatever, and he should do fine. But I just sinking sensation that it's going to be a little bit tougher in the Dome in Atlanta. And so Drew Lock, he's okay for GPPs. I can't get behind him in cash, even though it's a tasty matchup. Running backs, it's one of those situations where I'm not going to pick it. It's either Gordon or Lindsey, and I don't really need that. The two plays from this game that I'm looking at on the Denver side, one that speaks out a little bit more, Jerry Jeudy at 5,700 kind of came in and had his best game of the year last week. And now he's placing a very, very good secondary. He had 10 targets last week, went 4 for 73. And I like him this week too, and I think he is cash viable. The other play is Noah Fant at 5,800. He is just one of the main targets for Drew Lock. He has 16 targets in the last 2 games, and he should be on your list of tight ends that could go 4 for 40. And if they fall in, they'll be great.
I'm all over the Denver offense. I know it's early, but looking at this slate, I feel like they're going to be low owned because it's Denver. I get it. They're all very cheap, so I can use this as a way to get McCaffrey and Cook together if I want because the stack here is so cheap. My favorite play from the team is Noah Fant. Atlanta's been absolutely horrible against tight ends. We saw Robert Tanya did to him. Even Hawkinson and dirty garbage time. Shout out to Hawkinson, one of the contributors to my big week. But they give up touchdowns to tight ends. And on top of that, if you look at what Fant's been doing, like you'd mentioned, man, if you look at the amount of targets he's gotten, even in the last 3 games, 9, 7, and 6. Most recently the 9. So now you put him in a phenomenal matchup, one of the best on the board. I love Noah Fant at 4,600. Like I mentioned, tight end is relatively deep, but he's my favorite going in, at least early. And like you said, Jerry Jeudy, man, on the end of secondary is terrible. Jerry Jeudy was the dude that caught a lot of those deep balls over in Alabama from Tua. So I know Drew Lock, Tua, not exactly the same situation here, but we know that when he likes to go deep and he's capable of going deep, so that's just upside. We'll check the status on Tim Patrick. We know he missed last week, right? We'll check his status. If he's in, I'm interested in him too because I'll be looking at triple stacks. But it's going to be Drew Lock, Noah Fant in the teams that I like, with one of Patrick or Jeudy. The running backs, I'm okay with Melvin Gordon and all this, but you want pass catching running backs mostly against Atlanta, and I think this is just a really good spot for the pass game. What about the Atlanta side?
The Atlanta side, it's all going to come down to if Calvin Ridley, what his status is. They said that he had a mild foot sprain, and it was a Thursday game last week. So there's a chance for him to play this week. And if not, I don't mind either one. Julio has done great. Last 2 games, he's gotten 15 catches, over 200 yards. For some reason, he's just allergic to the end zone. I don't know what it is, but it's just so funny. But I think you could play him in a GBP setting. If Ridley's in, that means he's probably healthy. If he wasn't, I think if there's any bit of question at all about Ridley, they're just going to hold him out because they have a bye next week and they can rest him up and really get him back. Plus, Atlanta's not really doing anything either. So I would kind of think that Ridley's not going to play. So that would maybe push me to Russell Gage or the tight end Hayden Hurst at 5,600. He's another one of the guys. Same thing. He's just in that group where you could play him and hopefully he falls in the end zone. Don't really want anything about the run game. Denver is pretty good with that.
Yeah, Denver's defense has not been great for fantasy purposes in general. You mentioned if Ridley is out, I agree that I think Hayden Hurst will end up being fairly popular, but for good reason, especially on DraftKings at 4,100. But if Ridley's out, my main bring back in my Denver teams would definitely be Julio Jones. I mean, I think they're going to find ways to get him the ball, do what they can. You mentioned Russell Gage, who's also viable, but my hope is Ridley does play. I'll be interested in Ridley, but more importantly, I think it prevents them from taking one guy out. And I'm concerned that if Ridley's out, they may try to take Julio out and just let them get beat by Gurley, Gage, Hurst, the other options. But either way, one of these stud receivers is going to be, I think, the one you want to bring it back. And it sets up perfectly with the stacks. I had mentioned how cheap Denver was as stacks, so it allows you to afford one of Ridley or Julio Jones, depending on which one you want. So definitely a game I want to pay some attention to, as stated. And this next game is probably got to be one of the games of the week. We got the Seattle Seahawks, Buffalo Bills. We have a 55 total, up from 53. The Seahawks opened up -3. They're down to -2.5. Talk to me about Chef Russ. Call him Chef Russ because he's straight cooking, Joe. Straight cooking in the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, I think that this is the first slate of the year where you're just where's the game that everybody's going to go to? Where's the juiciest game, the 2 offenses, the shootout, the this, the that? And then you get to this game, and you're like, this is like the closest thing to it, but it's in Buffalo, and we've seen how offenses can go to Buffalo. It's a long flight, so it's a little bit I'm wondering about, but like, could Buffalo have they played the Patriots. They just haven't looked very good on defense. So Russ Wilson at 9K, you have to look at. I don't mind. You play him every week. Running backs, DJ Dallas becomes a thing if Carson and Homer are out, again, or what happens. But I think even if they're in, that muddles everything, so don't go to it. Receiver, I mean, I think you'd have to check this more than me, but is Tyler Lockett? I think the Bills are bad in the slot.
Yes.
So that would make me believe that this is more of a Tyler Lockett week.
Yes, sir.
Over DK Metcalf.
Yep.
Now, that don't mean you don't play DK. You can always play DK. He's probably like, just play him in a GBP, throw him in a game stack, because he could still break it, that. I just feel like this is a Tyler Lockett week now. Not because he didn't do anything last week, but because of the matchup. And we've seen that this is where Russ will just go to that, and he'll just keep going there and keep going there like he did the last 2 weeks. Last week it was Metcalf. He just kept taking care of Emmanuel Mosley everywhere. And then the week before, it was Lockett on, what was it, Kirkpatrick, right? From Arizona. So, like, to me, this is a Lockett week, and I don't like picking left big. I don't like switching back and forth. Snip, snap, snip, snap, snip, snap. I don't like doing that. But I think this is a week for Lockett, and the industry will once again go to DK because he's the one that blew up, and Tyler Lockett didn't. But just like last week, everybody went to Lockett. He was like 70% owned in cash games. And DK wasn't. Like, it just didn't get that. So people are just looking at box scores. So I prefer Lockett in cash. DK, obviously, you can always play in GBPs. He's my favorite player in the NFL.
Love that dude. DK's the man. He's on my season-long team. Love it. Love it. Yeah, I'm going to have some Russ, no doubt. One of my top quarterbacks. Every week he's got to be. Especially if Carson's out. If Carson's in, I actually don't mind Carson as a potential stack partner or as a bring back if you're stacking up the other side. But obviously that's a big if. I think we can also consider. See, here's the thing. Like, I like to do triple stacks no matter what I do, as much as I can. And this is a game where if I played Russ, I would expect it to go off. So I would want a triple stack. The issue is Russ Wilson, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett is very fucking expensive. So I'm more likely to pick Lockett because I agree with you. I think it's a Lockett week. He does play out of the slot. And that's where Buffalo's been weak. And the question is, who do I pair with him as like the third pairing? And I think at this point it's either a running back or it's one of the tight ends. I would lean towards Greg Olsen. Buffalo has given up a lot of fantasy points to opposing tight ends, actually 5th in the league in DVP. But I do like a lot of other tight ends, so it's kind of tough. So I maybe lean towards a running back. Maybe I just bite the bullet and reduce the third man and go with just a Lockett Wilson. But either way, I do like Wilson. I do like Lockett. And while I like Wilson, Wilson's actually not my favorite quarterback on the slate. He's on the other side of this game. Talk to me about Josh Allen, the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, Josh Allen, 8,200. He's priced up with the big boys. Last few weeks, he hasn't really produced. As an $8,200 quarterback from FanDuel, he hasn't really put up 3x since like week 4. But he's got a great matchup, and he's going to have to put up points. They're not going to try and they might try and slow down the game. That's the interesting part, is that there's like a thought in my head that that the Bills found something last week in Zach Moss. And he had 14 carries, and so did Singletary. That's 28 carries. Plus, you have Josh Allen that can run the ball. I'm just thinking, like, in a game theory sense of how this game might go. Could you see a scenario where Buffalo's like, we're going to try and slow this game down, try and keep Russ off the field? That, you know what I'm saying? I just feel like that could be a recipe for not disaster, just not living up to the expectations. Because last few weeks we've been seeing this Buffalo team run the ball a lot better. They have Zach Moss, which, by the way, I said it was a Zach Moss week on the Friday live stream. Wrote him up in my article in the Slack chat the night before. I was all Zach Moss on Twitter. I was like, Zach Moss is going to score 2 touchdowns. So I called that last week. There's a changing of the guard. Zach Moss is the goal line back. He's also the passing down back, I think. But to me, Zach Moss is the guy you want. The same price on FanDuel as Singletary. Now, I don't think you're gonna play either of them in a cash game setting, but you can play them in a GBP or in a game stack because I really think Zach Moss is the starting running back of this team. My favorite play of this game, though, is Stephon Diggs. He's the one guy I think that even if you didn't have Allen, you have Diggs and you'll be fine. You can pay up somewhere else or whatever, get the quarterback you want, and pay up and have not even have Allen. And just if you have Diggs, I think you can get the piece of Allen that you want. Because for Allen to really do well, you're hoping that he's got to run in a touchdown. John Brown, Cole Beasley. Yeah, I guess. I mean, if you want to, Brown and GPPs, Beasley, if you want to have a cash game guy. Tight end, there's nobody.
I mean, this is my favorite offense, and I don't see myself changing too much. I mean, maybe weather. I haven't checked weather or anything like that, and the game's in Buffalo. But I mean, every spot's the nuts against Seattle. Even last week, man, I know Garoppolo sucked. You could argue that he's been hurt, whatever. Then he got hurt. But Nick Mullins came in and was throwing touchdown passes, moving the ball in this defense. Now, I know that Seattle may be getting some guys back. Check the status on guys like Jamal Adams, etc. But Stephon Diggs looks like one of the best receiver plays on the slate, if not the best receiver play on the slate, though I'm a little biased because I'm getting excited talking about this team. Josh Allen's level of play has been down a little bit recently, but this is one of the best matchups on the board. It doesn't get much better than this. And on top of that, Buffalo's defense has not been very good also. So you expect Seattle to keep up and push this pace. Like I think we're going to see Allen on a whole different level. I think this game goes to the moon. I'm assuming this game's going to be popular. I was a little surprised to see other games kind of, seem to be gaining some traction, but I'm sure by the end of the week, most people will come around and be looking to play this game. And I don't see how you don't start with Diggs. Seattle's just not been able to stop any receivers, number ones, 2 slots, anything. John Brown, I'm willing to take chance on as the triple stack piece in all of this with the deep ball, though I don't mind Cole Beasley either. But Josh Allen, Diggs is number one. The question is who's the third guy I'm pairing with those dudes. But I really like this particular game, and I like the Buffalo side for full stacks based off price and everything. Josh Allen's only $7K, Joe, on DraftKings. Only $7K, which is real cheap for him. You know what I'm saying?
FanDuel makes it a little bit different.
Agreed.
Like, have you seen the quarterback prices on FanDuel?
Yes.
Like if you compare him, I mean, he's right there with Deshaun at 83, Kyler at 86. Like I just feel like they have higher floor ceiling combo.
Well, ceiling I don't know about, and that's because if we look at what Josh Allen was doing to start the season, he was putting up 30 burgers on a regular. Like I know Kyler Murray went for the 40. I think Murray has the highest floor because he's been the most willing to run. But I would argue that Josh Allen's ceiling is just as high. We haven't really seen him in a position like this, playing an offense. Well, I guess we have a little bit, right? He games against the Rams, I think, was a shootout. He's been in a couple of shootouts, but this one I just don't see how this is not a shootout. Buffalo is a good team. Seattle is a very good offense, but a very bad defense. It's like that. Seattle's very similar to Dallas. Had Dallas not, had Dak Prescott not gotten hurt, it was a similar situation. Obviously, Seattle's a better overall team. But it was a similar situation, and games were just going off. And now Seattle is just that dude. So I'll be coming here playing Horde. You know what I'm saying? Horde.
Man, you see what? Okay, let me ask you this, because we're gonna get there real. This is probably the next game we get to, or one of the last. What's Herbert's price on DraftKings compared to Allen?
Let's take a look at this. I got you. Herbie. Where you at, Herb? 680. He's $200 cheaper.
I think he's in just as good a spot and has just a high ceiling and might be able to put up just as many points.
I mean, I don't disagree that he's got a ceiling. We saw it, 41 against Jacksonville, and everything else. However, keep in mind that Seattle is a team like we expect this game to play fast, right? I think Buffalo is playing with the sixth highest pace this season. In Seattle, while in situation neutral, they'll go slower. Their defense is not good enough to hold anyone, so they end up in shootouts every week. The Raiders, we know, like they can play slow with the best of them, and there's also some questions on offensive efficiency. What if the Raiders don't do their part? That's also a possibility. Whereas to me in the Seattle Buffalo game, I just don't see how it's not high scoring, and that's really what it comes down to. So I think you make some very valid points, and I think Herbert you'll get at much lower ownership. But right now I'm a sucker for Allen, bro. I really am, sucker style, all day.
Yes, and to my friend in the chat that thinks I have a terrible take, this is me trying to guess the game flow. If you're going to try and beat the number one freaking offense in the game, you're going to try and keep them off the fucking field. So how do you do that? You run the clock. You let the clock run down. So don't tell me that it's a terrible fucking take when I just try to guess what I think that the game flow might be.
Fair enough. With that said, shootout coming. Book it.
Yeah, I hope it's a shootout. I'm just saying that I could see a way where you have a running quarterback, two running backs that you want to feed the ball to, keep the best offense off the field. How is that such a wild concept in football? How is that a wild concept? It's not.
It's thug life.
It's not. So don't tell me that couldn't happen.
It's thug life in
you know
these streets.
Saying?
No, I feel you. Speaking of Herbert, though, Joe, Las Vegas Raiders, Chicago. What the fuck am I talking about? Los Angeles Chargers, 53. Your Los Angeles Chargers, Joe. 53 total, up from 52.5. Looks like another high-scoring game, which is like a really good point as far as like pivoting lower own, like similar total. Like I do like that point you made on me. I like Allen. I'm being biased because I came in here high on him, but that was a slick point you made, Joe. With that said, Raiders currently 1.5-point underdogs, though they did open up as 3-point underdogs. Talk to me about Derek Carr and the Raiders first.
Yeah, I mean, Carr had a great matchup last week, and he was kind of like the low quarterback to play for cash besides Garoppolo. And I just think the weather kind of took him out of his game. He's now playing the Chargers, who he's played a lot in his career, and I think he could do just fine. I think he's a great GPP option. I think if you wanted to pay down at quarterback, I think he's better. He's safer to me than Locke, so I think I could deal with that. And he's okay down there. If you're gonna have, he's probably the safest quarterback at that area, so I'd be cool with that. The Chargers secondary is nothing special. They play down to their competition all the time. So I just feel like the Raiders, this is a decent game stack. I think you can have it. It's just kind of like, where do you want to go with like the wide receiving group of the Raiders? Do you want to go with, like low floor guys like Renfro, guy like Aguilar or Ruggs? I could see with, in a GBP setting to throw like long bombs and stuff like that. And then don't be afraid to go back to Darren Waller. Chargers aren't great against the tight end, and I feel like people will be scared away because of what happened last week. So I think he'd be fine, and he's good for another good targets. You got to remember the weather was really bad last week, and I'm not one to defend the Raiders at all. I'm not a Raider fan at all, but I do see how they can take advantage of this Chargers defense and put up some points for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that the Raiders. I think, I mean, they're one of the slower paced teams, but they went extra slow. Like you said, man, it was a nasty game, nasty weather, winds. At some point, they had some like sleet, snow kind of bullshit. The Chargers have actually been playing somewhat fast in situation neutral. I mean, fairly fast in situation neutral situations. I know that sounds so fucked up to say. But I'm with you. I think there's some diamond in the rough types here. Waller, first of all, stands out on the Raiders. It looks like he's in a phenomenal spot. 6 more fantasy points at tight ends. The Chargers have given up. Carr is interesting in that range. I agree. Especially last week, some people tried it. A lot of people backed off because of the weather. Maybe this is a spot to go back. Like you'd mentioned, Joe, this game seems like it's going to have significantly less ownership overall than the Seattle Buffalo game I would assume, but we have a similar total and we have some potential here. So coming around on Aguilar, on Ruggs, maybe necessary, but I think Waller and Carr is good enough at this point. I'm totally fine with that. What about the Chargers side?
Yeah, Chargers side, we already kind of touched on Herbert at 7,900. And so obviously he's fine. I don't play rookie quarterbacks in cash, so but I feel like he's a great spot. Raiders, I think this game is going to shoot out. So I feel like he has a chance to keep up with the big boys. And at 7,900, he's probably good for 275 or 300 and 2 touchdowns. So I like that. The running back, I think Justin Jackson is the guy you want. He got 17 carries last week, 3 receptions. I think that he is the lead back right now until Eckler gets back. They were giving Tremaine Pope run last week. So I think this is Justin Jackson's backfield. Kelly will be mixed in a little bit. Wide receivers, Keenan Allen obviously is the cash game guy. He makes a living off of, beating the Raiders. So I don't mind that. Mike Williams is a GPP guy. You throw Hunter Henry into that group of the 4 for 40 guys, and if he falls in the end zone, he'll be fine. But at 5,600, he's just another guy. There's nothing really great about him. I think I like, Herbert, Jackson, and Keenan Allen the best.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Herbert definitely is added on the quarterback list with his upside and ceiling. Keenan Allen is the obvious stack partner. And then Mike Williams, to me, is a clear number 2. You want to take a shot on Guyton, that's fine for like 150s and the Millie Makers or whatever. Hunter Henry's kind of really fallen off. Not the greatest matchup on paper, but he's 4K at this point on DraftKings, which is really low. But Keenan Allen just seems like still underpriced on DraftKings at 7K. Perfect pairing with Herbert. But I like Justin Jackson a lot, man. Justin Jackson is 4,900 on DraftKings. Like you mentioned, he had like 17 carries last week, plus another. How many targets did he get? Like 6? Or something like that.
Yeah,
so
5 targets. Yeah.
So you don't like to see Pope get worked in there too much, but I feel pretty confident in Justin Jackson. I know Kareem Hunt disappointed last week, but I think that was part of the game. The Browns' offense just not being efficient in general, and so I expect the Chargers to be a little bit more efficient offensively because they have been, and I expect them to be able to throw the ball down the field, which should open things up for guys like Justin Jackson. The Raiders aren't a team that likes to stack the box. So I really like Justin Jackson. He's probably my favorite play from this team at the moment. With that said, let's move it over to the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Dallas Cowboys. We've got a 42 total. The Cowboys are currently 14-point underdogs at home. Talk to me about Big Ben, James Conner, the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, I think this is the makings of like an onslaught type of game, or like how I would probably be attacking this in cash is Connor. I'm thinking Connor is going to be number 1 or number 2 highest owned back on the slate. I don't know what his price is on DK, but on FanDuel it's 8,200. It's up there, but with the workload that I think he's going to get in the positive game script, he's in a smash spot against Dallas and the defense that's just not good. And we saw what Boston Scott has done against them. And, the Philly ran all over them on Sunday night. So James Conner is probably the number one play on this. The Steelers' D is probably going to be the second highest or maybe the highest defense on the slate, even though they're this high priced. They're going to be facing either Cooper Rush or the other guy's name. I don't remember his name. They benched DiNucci. So I think people are just going to go to them, and I could see it totally. They're going to be pretty much a lockdown defense. Ben, if you're not playing Connor in cash, I could totally see Ben Roethlisberger in cash just playing him naked, not really knowing where he's going to go and such. If I had to rank the receivers, I'd probably go Juju, Deontay, Claypool. But it's hard to pick which one. Obviously, if one of them gets hurt, Deontay Johnson, I know he was out for a little bit in that game last week. So, I don't really know if he's going to be good this week. Practice reports come out tomorrow, and we'll get more of a sense on how this slate is going to shape up and such. But I don't mind. I personally like Deontay. If he's healthy, I think he's good. All those receivers are good GPPs. I just can't really rely on cash.
Yeah, I think starting with the obviously the Steelers side, James Conner definitely a good place to start. 6,900 on DraftKings, a much more friendly, softer price than the 82 on FanDuel. But either way, I think he's a good play on both sides also. Hard to imagine him not just getting a ton of carries, his team getting up. With that said, I also have interest in some of these receivers. Well, depending on the situation. Last week, I know that Claypool got involved again. My understanding is because of the matchup against a good Baltimore defense, Pittsburgh decided to go with more receivers in their sets than usual, like an extra receiver. If Deontay Johnson can stay healthy, which has been a big problem for him this year, I still think he's the guy. I still think he's the one that's going to have that role of double-digit targets. Last week I heard some people talk about he got hurt last week. I haven't seen it anywhere official, but I heard people complaining that he got hurt. I don't know. Do you know if he actually got hurt or if it was just that Claypool got targets because they had an extra receiver in the set?
I know that he came out at one point in the game.
Okay, so we don't know. Okay, because I have no reason to believe that he's not the number one, and this is as good of a matchup as it gets. So he would be my favorite. But obviously, if for any reason he was out, then Claypool, it's easy. It's just plugging Claypool. So I think if Johnson's there, I'm going Johnson. Otherwise, I'm going Claypool. Unless we hear otherwise that something is happening with the depth charts. But I'm going to assume that it's still Deontay Johnson as long as he's healthy. So that would be my main two. But like you said, Connor's the main here. Steelers' defense is very expensive on DraftKings, but could be worth it. I mean, Dallas's offense is pretty inept right now. Speaking of Dallas's offense, Joe, talk to me about Dallas's offense.
I mean, there's really not much to say. We don't really know who's the starting quarterback. We don't really know how to react. I mean, even last week, Gallup got a whole bunch of targets, but, that could be, week to week, who's he going to, who's going to get the targets and stuff like that. Like Amari Cooper seems disinterested. Zeke is like an $8,000 David Montgomery. So there's really nobody in this offense you're going to want.
I got nothing. I mean, Gallup would be the only one, like you said, because he got so many targets in the last game that seemed maybe that they were just letting him be shorter up, like they were having him play closer up. That's the potential. But, yeah, I mean, I think that he would be the only one, and I don't think he needed anything. And Zeke's at 66 seems like such a waste, but that's the situation that we're in right now. That's the world we live in. And unfortunately, for Zeke, the Steelers have been very good against the run. It's been the receiving game where Dallas has actually been weak. So I just don't see it either, man. I can't do it. Last game, and could be, definitely an interesting one. We've got the Miami Dolphins and the Arizona Cardinals. We have a 48 total up from 47.5. Cardinals open up -4.5. They're still at -4.5. Joey, talk to me about Tua and the Miami Dolphins, who look pretty good against the Rams. They look good once again.
Mm-hmm. Tua did not look very good against the Rams. I mean, they got very lucky with 5 interceptions and stuff, and No, I am not going to deal with that. I think I'd be looking more at the Arizona D. The running back situation, Gaskin was going to become quite of a cash play this week, but with the news of him being out, Breda, Howard, being, they're so cheap. If somebody said that Breda is going to be the starter, because I know that they just traded for DeAndre Washington, but don't they have that rule that if you get traded, you have to sit out a week or something?
You have to have 5 COVID tests in a row negative before you're allowed to even practice.
Okay, so even if he practiced with Saturday, then he would practice with the team. So I think it's kind of a fish play if you were to go all the way down to Breda, but there's not really many everybody there. We're getting to Patrick Laird territory then, So, but I just don't think you need it. Wide receiver, I really don't like anything in this offense right now until I see more of it. Tua did not do very well at all. He looked overmatched. So I'm not gonna touch their offense.
For me, I don't disagree with too much of that. I'm a little worried about Parker with Patrick Peterson. Well, it's not just Patrick Peterson. It's Patrick Peterson in combination with, like you said, how Tua looked. I do like Breida a lot. Now, assuming that Washington's not available, Jordan Howard was he's not even on the field at this point. They don't seem interested in him at all. It comes down to, I think Laird has a better opportunity of competing with Breida, and I just think when you look at the talent level of these three, I think Breida's on a different planet. I know we haven't seen much from him, but we know he's capable of catching passes. I expect him to get a majority of the carries. So Breida at $4K on DraftKings, which is min price, and again, a lot of that has to do with me assuming he's going to get some pass game work against a defense that plays a lot of zone, and I think is willing to give up more in the flat that rather than getting beat down the field deep. So I expect Breida to be active. I expect him to get targets. So at 4K. Plus, he allows me to easily get those Diggs and Josh Allen and Russ lineups. Makes it more comfortable. So we got to see what the news says as we get more information. I'm assuming Breida's the lead guy, and if he is, I'm all over it. If we find out that Washington is somehow freakishly available or whatever the case is, which even so, like you said, man, if I think he has to get there, then he has to learn the playbook. There's still so many variables. So I think it'll be Breida. And as of right now, I plan on taking some shots there. What about the Arizona side?
Yeah, the Arizona side, you're going to want a piece of this offense in cash. I think you're either going to want to play Kyler Murray, Chase Edmonds, or DeAndre Hopkins. I think the most chalkiest play probably will be Chase Edmonds. So we don't have, Kenny and Drake. So it's pretty much all of Miami. It's going to be all of Chase Edmonds against this, beatable, I think, Miami run defense. So I don't mind him. I would be expecting, obviously, Kyler Murray to run the ball himself a little bit, but Chase Edmonds, 6,700 is fine. And then wide receiver, talked about DeAndre Hopkins, 8,800. He's good. Christian Kirk for a GPP. He was very productive going into the bye, so I don't mind that either. But yeah, I like this side. And then the Arizona defense has got to be looked at also as an option.
Yeah, definitely more attracted to the Arizona weapons. I'm fine with Murray because of the floor, though Edmonds is probably my favorite at the moment. I don't normally like to take running backs from the same game, but I'll make an exception here because Breida is so cheap. And again, I expect Breida and his team to be playing from behind. I expect him to get some pass game work. Edmonds, I think, is just in a really good overall matchup. So I do like Chase Edmonds. We know Kenyon Drake. The Arizona Cardinals have given up the 7th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. I'm fine with D-Hop. He's expensive, so you need some value to make that work. I'm okay with Kirk. I'd really only use them, I think, in stacks at this point with Murray. Otherwise, there are other receivers that I would just stop at. Well, I shouldn't say that about Hopkins because if I had 8,200 in the flex, I'd consider it. But again, Dalvin Cook is that same price. Christian McCaffrey is $300 more, and I think there are some concerns about Tua and if he's able to keep up because he hasn't looked so good. So Edmonds for sure though looks like one of the better plays for me. Miami has been vulnerable against the run, though I'm not as excited into this game. It's really the running backs Breida and Edmonds I think I like the most. And that is going to do it, Nation, for our game-by-game breakdown. In our first look, don't forget to come back Friday night. It'll be myself, Paulie D, breaking down for the NFL Y stream. More of our final takes, go position by position. Talk about some of the news that's come up, see where we end up. You can get Patty and Joe's cash game article at whitestake.com. Joe's been doing an awesome job with that. I keep seeing the screenshots in the Slack. More and more people have been playing cash, man, buying into your philosophies, and it's been working out for them. Obviously, last week I did not do so hot, but 2 weeks ago, me and MG had a really big week, over 30K in winnings between the two of us, and we're looking to build on more, man. We're looking to get more people out there, so I really like this slate. Last week I was pretty open with on a lot of the shows in our Slack that I wasn't crazy about the slate. It was ugly. This one I like a lot. I think there's a lot of really good moves. So make sure you hit the like button, subscribe. And help the nation grow, man. As long as the nation grows, we'll continue to invest more resources and make these shows better and put more into our content, but we need your help. We are a premium DFS content provider as well as a DFS community design to help make you a better DFS player. Joey, anything in closing before we get up out of here?
I appreciate everybody tuning in and listening to my takes, and I hope that you come back next week for more takes on the Wise Take.
That's it. Also, for the record, don't be a dick. Like, there's people out there who are just like dicks all the time, and it's like, don't be a dick. Don't go through your life being a dick. It's just not worth it. It's not worth it. The satisfaction you will not get at the end. You might get it for the couple moments you're bored, but you will not get it in the end. Don't be a dick. But with that said, we're going to get up out of here. Appreciate you, Nation. Don't forget to join the listener leagues. They're free to get in, and you could potentially win $25 on either site, each site, whatever. So get in there, man. Let's have some fun. Has a little friendly competition action going on. Make sure you get in these contests. For Patio Joe, for myself, the entire Wise Tech Nation, we appreciate you guys, and as always, good luck.
Peace.
Yeah.